Before this video begins, I would just like to apologize. I did not have my usual mic with me when recording this video, so there's going to be a lot of white noise as well as clicking and banging because I had to use my phone as a microphone for this video. Anyways, besides that, I thank you so much for watching. Alright, so we have another photo editing video, and this one is going to be rather special because this is a photo of a Mangshan mountain pit viper. There's about 500 of them left in the wild, located in a small region of China. There are quite a few in captivity because there is a conservation effort happening to save these vipers from going extinct. The Sandiegozoo is one of the first zoos that actually hatched one of these in captivity. A little while ago, I went to San Diego and visited the zoo, and I got the opportunity to photograph this animal. Now, before we begin this video, I want to make a quick disclaimer that I did not tap the glass or touch the glass with the camera. I put my camera as close to the glass as I could without actually touching it because I know that snakes can feel vibrations and tapping the glass would have just pissed them off. I took these pictures by putting my camera as close to the glass as I could without actually tapping the glass itself. So let's get into the editing. Now for this photo, I'm not going to be using the auto feature. I know in the last video I said it's a really good feature that'll help. However, there are limitations to it and it can turn a photo that you would want to be moody into a very overexposed bright image, and you would have to spend a lot more time editing it down than if you would have just left it without putting the auto tone on. And this is one of those cases where I want to make this photo moody, but if I hit the auto right here, as you can see, it makes this photo way too bright. I'm gonna have to spend a bunch of extra time trying to make it more moody. So we're gonna press Command Z and bring it back to normal, and we're gonna be doing all of the editing ourselves. So I do want a slight exposure raise. I do not want to do anything too bright because again, we are trying to keep this moody because the snake is in a moody kind of humid setting and we're trying to keep it that way. The aim of increasing the exposure a little bit is to bring the snake out more, make the viper pop out a little bit more. So that is why I'm raising the exposure just a little bit. I'm gonna also play around with the temperature just to get the white balance more correct, and that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and start playing with the rest of the image. So I couldn't get my camera any closer to the glass without touching it and going against the rules of the zoo. So there is a little bit of glare. As you can see, there's some glare here, and you can also see some glare over here. So we're gonna dehaze that without dehazing it too much because then it just gets too dark and too saturated. Now I noticed that there's a lot of purple popping up and we're gonna fix that later, but for now let's continue playing with the tone. We're gonna decrease the highlights because this in the background is looking a little too bright, but we're also going to increase the shadows to bring this area out a little more. Increase the whites to +24 and then the blacks -14. And that's looking good, except for now this distinguished gentleman's face is looking a little too dark. We're going to use masking to fix that. Over here it's out of focus because I did use manual focus for this image. It was one of my first times using it. Still working on it, gonna get better. We don't need to increase the texture too much. We're just gonna add +15 to that and then overall clarity to the image. I think we're just gonna do maybe +20 on the clarity. The snake's head is much too dark on the bottom half. Also, I'm starting to see clipping. All these blue flakes and these red flakes are highlight and low light clipping. So let's do a very small S-curve. I'm still learning to do S-curves as well, but we're also going to flatten out the blacks by raising the bottom of the S-curve and lowering the top of the S-curve to flatten out the highlights and the blacks. That is looking absolutely brilliant. We also might increase the vibrance and the saturation. We don't want to lower it like this to make it look ugly, but we don't want to make it look like that because that just looks gross. So we'll keep the saturation +18 and +13 on the vibrance. That's already looking perfect. I'm gonna raise the bottom of the S-curve just a little bit, just so we can bring out the bottom here. And so far that's looking good. However, now I'm noticing a lot of ugly purples in the image. I'm noticing some right here, and definitely right here. That is gross. So I'm gonna head over here to the color mixer, and here you just play around with the colors until you're happy. Gonna just completely get rid of almost all the purples, maybe not too much because it does add some color to the log that the viper's head is sitting on. So I'm just going to do a bit of a slider test to see what affects the snake. It looks like when I do this, the snake isn't actually getting affected. So that makes me want to believe that the green color on this snake is actually controlled by the yellow tab. And it looks like I was right. So we're going to be focusing on the snake's color with using the yellow color mixer. We're also going to touch up the greens because the greens are way oversaturated. So we're going to go ahead and adjust the luminance to make it darker, offset the hue to make it more humid and jungle type, And then we decrease the saturation a little bit just to make sure that these over here don't look completely oversaturated. Before, after, looking good so far. Alright, now it's time to play around with the color of the snake. So we don't want to make it orange because that's not the color of the snake. But we also don't want to make it too green either because that's also not the color of the snake. As you can see, if you look at this image here and then look at this image here, using this image for reference, the color is not the same. The Mangshan mountain viper is supposed to be this color. It's like a brighter green, almost kind of like a neon green, maybe not too much, but definitely a brighter greenish yellow tinge. And if we look at this image, it's definitely like a greenish yellow tinge, but it's not bright. So we're gonna go ahead and fix that real quick. We don't want to make it that green. We want to adjust it to right here, which is not green, but also not yellow. It's kind of like a yellow fading into green, and that is the most accurate we can get this snake. So we're going to put it right about here. We're going to increase the saturation, and we're also going to increase the luminance to give it that bright green color. Now if we look at that, it's starting to look better. However, this snake is still looking way too dark. And that is where the power of masking comes in. We're going to go ahead and click over here, hit the brush mask, and we're going to start painting on the snake's darker areas to bring it more to life. We don't want to paint over the snake's brighter areas because at that point we're just going to overexpose the snake and it's not going to look good. So we only want to focus on the parts of the body where it is dark. First things first, we're going to go ahead and paint over here. I'm going to hit the O key so I can see where my mask is affecting. And once again, we only want to affect the body of the snake where it is dark. Alright, so I've selected two parts of the snake where it looked quite dark. So now we're going to go to the exposure and just ever so carefully, we don't want to increase it like that because that's just overexposing it, and we don't want it to look dark like that. So we're going to increase the exposure enough to where the body can stand out without overexposing it. Before, after, and this is looking beautiful so far. Take a look at that quality. Now, I also noticed some grain. All you gotta do to fix that is go down here to noise reduction and play with the luminance until you're happy. I never set my luminance above 30. Usually 30 is the sweet spot to where everything is fixed. I think the background here looks actually kind of bright. I'm not a big fan with how bright that is. So we're gonna go ahead and put a linear gradient down. We don't want to lower the exposure too much because then it just looks ugly. We don't want that. We just want to take more attention off the background. So we're gonna lower the exposure on the background just a bit, and then we're also going to bring the clarity down. Now notice how when I did that, it's bringing more focus onto the snake itself. I feel like these leaves over here were also distracting. What is going on here? I need to fix that. Hold on a second. What happened there? Yeah, that little bright leaf, I don't know what happened there, but that's looking a little too distracting. So I may just have to crop it out entirely as best as I can, because otherwise that's just gonna look gross. Hit return, and that looks beautiful. Do a before, after, beautiful. This is a gorgeous looking viper, and it's really sad that these are critically endangered. And the last thing we're gonna do before we do the official before and after is we're gonna color grade a little bit. I either want to make my shadows blue or green. Here's what it looks like with blue shadow, and then if I make it look more green like the snake's color, this is what it looks like. I think with the green tinge, it looks more natural with the leaves and the snake, so we're going to go ahead and do a green tinge to the shadows. And for the highlights, we're going to go ahead and do a blue. It's kind of like the Seahawks, you know, green and blue. And alright, let's do the official before and after. Before, after, before, after, one more before, after. I think that looks absolutely brilliant. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed watching this video. I thank you so much for watching. I had a really good time visiting the San Diego Zoo. It's actually the best zoo I've ever visited, and I'm thankful to God I got the opportunity to fly down there and see this animal in person and take a photo of it for myself. Have a good morning or evening wherever you are in the world, and I will see you all in the next one.